The golden era of American Jews is over. So there was a situation in Congress recently in which they wanted to pass two bills that would be against anti-Semitism. So there was the anti-Semitism bill, and then there was something else that pertained to anti-Semitism. Republicans in Congress pretty much scuttled it. Now, why would Republicans go against bills that are against anti-Semitism? I thought Republicans were supposed to be super pro-Israel and they're getting all this money from AIPAC. What the hell is going on? I'll tell you what's going on. Here's my prediction for American politics in regards to Israel. I think a time is coming when a politician will come out and say in the open, I am not funded by AIPAC. And he will say it in his advertisement videos. And he will say, I am not funded by AIPAC. My opponent gets money from AIPAC. I am not controlled by Jerusalem. I am here for the American people. I do not do things at the behest of Jerusalem or at the behest of AIPAC. I do things to help the American people, and that is why I am here. I am a true patriot. The time is coming when that is going to become common. And the time is coming when we will have the first politician to be elected because he is anti-AIPAC. The time is coming when it will be a selling point for a politician to come out and say, I am not funded by AIPAC. The point being that the zeitgeist that we are transitioning into is one that is anti-Israel, and it is one in which the politics of the United States is becoming more and more anti-Israel, critical of Israel. The electorate in the United States, the voters in the United States, are becoming either more anti-Israel or they are becoming more indifferent towards Israel. And the voters in the United States are becoming more and more adverse to America's very common foreign policy of supporting Israel. And we're seeing it. We are seeing the gradual beginning stages towards this denouement, towards this reality. And we're seeing it. The zeitgeist, the vibes, everything. It's all coming together. The zeitgeist is what? One that is either anti-Israel or just utterly indifferent to Israel. But in either direction, it is one that is adverse to the idea of America supporting Israel. And this is getting stronger and stronger. And you're seeing this really manifesting itself in the popularity for people like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens. They are all anti-AIPAC. They're all critical of Israel. And so the time is coming when we will have the first politician to get elected on the selling point that he is not funded by AIPAC. And it's not going to matter how much money AIPAC has. It's not going to matter how much money the ADL has, because when it comes to winning elections, what matters at the end of the day is the opinion of the masses. And if the opinion of the masses is one that is antithetical to Israel, and it gets to the point where you cannot win if it is known that you are funded by AIPAC, politicians are going to come out and say they are not funded by AIPAC because that is what the zeitgeist is going to demand. Public opinion matters when it comes to voting. And the reason why so many politicians have been pro-Israel is not just because of money, but it's also because of the boomers who are very pro-Israel. That plays a big role. So there was a bill, and I'm going to talk about it here. There was an article that was published recently about two bills that Republicans went against. And these bills were against anti-Semitism. And the Republicans came out, not all of them, but a number of them came out and said that these bills are against free speech because these bills, if passed, would restrict criticism of Israel and would restrict criticism of the Jewish people. And some have gone so far as to say that that one of the bills, if passed, would prevent people or would penalize people from speaking about the crucifixion of Christ, because in the New Testament, it's the Jewish religious order that murders Christ ultimately. And speaking about the crucifixion of Christ would then be designated as anti-Semitism and would thus be illegal. And so these Republicans are saying that these bills against anti-Semitism are a threat to the First Amendment. So it says here that Republicans foiled the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, also known by its acronym AAA, and an anti-boycott bill bringing into question the GOP strategy and pro-Israel groups' ability to influence the party's fringe. So with all the money that the pro-Israel political groups have, they still could not get these bills voted for by all the Republicans. They couldn't get all the Republicans to vote for this bill. Why? Because public opinion is changing. Republicans aligned with the party's fringe have scuttled a pair of highly controversial anti-Semitism bills in recent weeks, despite intense support from the pro-Israel establishment in the United States. So, despite all of the money that the pro-Israel establishment has, they still could not get the GOP to fully be on board with these bills. Why? You would think with all the money, they could get these politicians to do anything, because it's not just about money. Not everything is about money. Some things truly are about the general opinion of the people, collective consciousness, the zeitgeist, the spirit of the age, the vibes, what people really, really believe in. All these things play a role in political manifestations. All these things play a role in bills getting passed, laws getting passed. And if enough people become antagonistic towards Israel to the point where it's seeping into the Republican world, the pro-Israel lobby is in big ass trouble. Because for the longest time, the pro-Israel lobby has been reliant upon the Republican Party. The Republican Party has always been more pro-Israel than the Democrat Party. Democrats are the ones who tend to be more critical of Israel. I know Democrat presidents in the past have been pro-Israel. I understand that. But as far as public opinion goes, Democrats have been the ones who tend to be more critical of Israel. But now we're seeing a change. We are seeing the anti-Israel sentiment percolating into the Republican world. And we see this very clearly, very conspicuously in the fact that Tucker Carlson is as popular as he is. Why is Tucker Carlson so popular even amongst Republicans when he is a critic of Israel? Why all of a sudden is Candace Owens so popular amongst Republicans, even though she is critical of Israel? Because the opinion is changing. Now, what's one of the factors that is involved in all this? I think it has to do to a great extent with the fact that World War II was almost 100 years ago. I think a lot of that has to do with that. I think a lot of this has to do with that. The fact that the Holocaust was almost a century ago, the fact that we are 80 or so years after World War II, 80 plus years after World War II. So World War II is becoming what? It's becoming a distant memory. And when something becomes a distant memory, what happens? That historical event is left to negotiation. It goes into the negotiating table. And it is no longer about memory. It's about opinion. It's about interpretation. It's about how we interpretate history. And we can then interpret history however the hell we want. we can say Hitler was the good guy, and we can have a whole faction of historians who subscribe to that belief. Now you can say, well, that's already happening, and it is, but it's happening under the superintendence of memory. Now, what do I mean by that? We still have World War II vets. We still have Holocaust survivors. And those people are still alive. They are dying out, don't get me wrong, but there are still enough of them alive to come out and say, no, I was there and I remember what happened. I was there and I remember Hitler. I remember the camps. I remember the Holocaust. What happens when all those people are dead? What's going to happen is the realm of memory will also be put into the grave. And then what you have left, all that you have left, is history. And history is left to what? Interpretation. History is left to what? Negotiation. And so what happens is we end up with a Genghis Khan situation. Genghis Khan murdered more people than Adolf Hitler. And I'm not saying this as a way to water down the Holocaust. By no means. I'm just giving an historical fact. Genghis Khan murdered more people than Adolf Hitler did. Genghis Khan, without the technology that the Germans had, was able to wipe out around, 11% of the world's population? That is huge. In Iran alone, the Mongolian Empire murdered millions. In Iran alone, millions dead by the Mongolian Empire. The Mongolian Empire was the most murderous empire in all of history. Yet, walk into any Barnes & Noble and pick up a book on the Mongolian Empire. Is there a lot of condemnation of the Mongolian Empire? Is there a lot of talk of the evil of the Mongolian Empire, even though the Mongolian Empire killed more people than the Third Reich did? No, there isn't. Why? Because the evils of the Mongolian Empire are not in the realm of memory. No one remembers the Mongolian Empire because it was, close to 1,000 years ago? I mean, centuries upon centuries ago? A long-ass time ago. No one from the Mongolian Empire is alive. That means what? That means we can take the written memories of those who were alive, in which they were recounting on how murderous the Mongolians were. We have accounts written in the time of the Mongolian Empire that describe how murderous the Mongolians were. We have accounts from the time of Attila the Hun that recount how murderous the Huns were. But when you pick up a modern book about the Huns, you will read that the accounts of the survivors of Hunnic bloodlust were exaggerations. Oh yes, I've seen this myself. Years ago, I found a book on the Huns in Barnes & Noble, and I was reading it, and I read the introduction of the book. And you know what it said? It said that the accounts describing the atrocities done by the Huns were exaggerations. And you can find the same sort of thing being said about Mongolian atrocities. And you will see documentaries on the Mongolian Empire, and it'll talk about how great the Mongolian Empire was. It'll talk about how expansive the Mongolian Empire was. There's no condemnation of the Mongolian Empire. And I think that the Third Reich is going to enter that same realm of interpretation, negotiation, revisionism. And once all of the World War II survivors, once all the Holocaust survivors are gone, then all that you will be left with are historians. And you will have historians who will say the Holocaust happened and the Nazis were evil, etc., etc. But you will see the rise of revisionist historians on the Holocaust becoming very, very prominent. I mean, David Irving was the first big Holocaust denier. He was the first big historian who wrote about Holocaust revisionism, or he wrote opinions denying the official Holocaust narrative. And that was years ago. That was over 10 years ago. And even then, David Irving had a very large following. Imagine what's going to happen after all the World War II vets and all the Holocaust survivors are dead. Imagine. You're going to have a whole bunch of David Irvings, and you're going to have an entire industry of Holocaust denying. It's going to be big. It's going to be scary. But that is what we are leading to. We are heading towards a world in which the Third Reich is going to be seen just like historians see the Mongolian Empire or the Hunnic Empire. Failure of the two bills, the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act and the IGO Anti-Boycott Act, further challenges how much influence the pro-Israel community has within the American political scene. The pro-Israel lobby is dying. The question is even more pressing considering Israel advocates have publicly and privately propagated Democrats as the party that is more problematic and adrift from traditional pro-Israel positions. Now, what did I just say? I said that traditionally Democrats have been the ones who are more critical of Israel. Republicans traditionally have been the most pro-Israel. But we are seeing a slight, but nonetheless, we are seeing a change. We are seeing a slight change, albeit it is a change. And it's only going to grow. It is only going to grow because millennials are very distant from the birth of Israel. They're very distant from World War II, the Holocaust. Zoomers are even more distant. And it's going to get even worse with the alphas, with Generation Alpha. We're going to be seeing kids driving around blasting Heil Hitler by Kanye West. I mean, that's what's going to happen. They're probably going to start playing this song in high schools. It's going to get worse. And Kanye West has a very effective strategy. Sadly enough to say this, but it's true. Because if they say, oh, look, racism, blah, 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 Kanye West is going to say, I'm black. And then they're going to say, well, black people can still be racist too. Oh, so now black folks can be racist. Well, for decades, they were saying only white people can be racist. Now black folks can be racist. And didn't they say that Ukraine doesn't have a Nazi problem because Zelensky is Jewish? Well, Zelensky's Jewish, so it's impossible for Ukraine to have a Nazi problem. Oh, but now Kanye West is a racist. Yeah. Whatever is to their advantage at any particular moment. So it says here that with a GOP majority in both chambers of Congress, Israel's hawkish supporters have braced for swift passage of bills relating to both Israel and anti-Semitism, including legislation that critics from across the aisle warned unduly conflated criticism of Israel with anti-Jewish hatred. So the Israeli supporters thought, well, the GOP, they're going to pass these two anti-Semitism bills immediately. It's not what happened. For years, much of the GOP's focus on anti-Semitism has been primarily oriented around attacking the pro-Palestinian camps protest movement. The AAA, as the primary bill is colloquially known, has long been the apple of the pro-Israel community's eye. So they wanted to get this anti-Semitism bill passed. They really wanted to get passed. They were hoping that it would get passed under the Republicans. And a lot of people in the GOP went against it. And it says here, primarily aimed at addressing campus anti-Semitism, it would legally require the Education Department to take the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism into account when determining if an action violating Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act was motivated by anti-Semitism. So they're saying, well, if you get this bill passed, then universities are going to have to penalize anti-Semitic students when they're being anti-Semitic. But what's going to define anti-Semitism? Who defines anti-Semitism? Well, according to this bill that the pro-Israel lobby wanted the GOP to pass, the entity that would define anti-Semitism would be the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. So this Holocaust Remembrance entity would be the one defining what is anti-Semitism when imposing this bill. So if this thing gets passed and students are getting in trouble for, I don't know, protesting Israel, then they're going to know that it's some Holocaust memorial entity that's defining anti-Semitism and that's punishing them. And you're going to get even more hatred towards remembering the Holocaust. You're going to garner more hatred against remembering the Holocaust. And they're going to say, you're going to have more and more people saying, to hell with the Holocaust. We're tired of hearing the Holocaust. We're tired of hearing about it. And that distance, that chasm between the younger generations and remembering the Holocaust is going to widen 10 times more. So pushing laws against anti-Semitism is actually having the opposite effect of the intention of these bills. The intention of these bills is to temper anti-Semitism, or it's to punish anti-Semitism. It's to dissuade and to discourage anti-Semitism. But the end result of pushing these bills is going to be the very opposite of their intentions. And they're going to bring about more anti-Semitism by pushing for penalties against anti-Semitism. Because then people are saying, and people are already doing this, people are saying, look, in the name of anti-Semitism, they're trying to destroy the First Amendment. In the name of remembering the Holocaust, they're trying to impose restrictions on my First Amendment right of free speech. Well, what is the conclusion that a lot of people are going to come to? The conclusion is the Holocaust was made up. This is not my conclusion, but I'm saying people are coming to this conclusion, and more people will come to this conclusion. Their conclusion is, and it's going to be, the Holocaust was made up as a way to control speech and to establish Jewish supremacy in the United States. You're going to increase anti-Semitism. More and more people are going to get into Holocaust denialism. More and more people are going to get into that whole David Irving fold. They're going to get into the Nick Fuentes faction. They're going to get into the Kanye West faction. And you're going to have more and more people listening to this Heil Hitler song that Kanye West made recently. It's coming, folks. I hate to say it, but it's the truth. In fact, there was an article that was written about this. It was published by The Atlantic. I did a video about this years ago. Brilliant article. It was written in 2023. And the title of the article was "The Golden Era of American Jews is Over." The golden era. There was a golden era of American Jewry. There was. It was after World War II. And there was the Holocaust, and there was World War II. The Nazis were defeated, and knowledge about the Holocaust became widespread. It became mainstream. And people said, oh my God, these poor people were genocided. And look, now they're in Israel. Prophecy is being fulfilled. God has brought the Jews back to their land. This is prophecy being fulfilled. And pro-Israel sentiment exploded in the United States. Now remember, during World War II, anti-Semitism was common in the United States. Super common in the United States. They don't talk about this, but it's the truth. If you don't believe me, look up the, what is it called? The SS St. Louis ship, I think it was called. The SS St. Louis. It was a ship that was filled with Jewish refugees who were escaping the Nazi reign of terror, and they were trying to enter the United States. The boat came to the U.S., and do you know what people in America were saying? We don't want Jews in the U.S. because the Jews will ruin American society. This is what they were saying. And the eugenists were saying that if you allow Jews to enter America, they will ruin the Anglo-Saxon genetic makeup of the United States. This is what they were saying. And the ship was sent back to Europe, and those people in their ship were sent back to their deaths. And this was done by American people. Americans did this. So Americans, at one point in time, were so virulently anti-Semitic that they didn't mind sending a ship of people back to the Nazis. They didn't mind sending people back to their deaths. They were so vitriolically anti-Jewish. Well, that all virtually disappeared after World War II. Especially with the establishment of the State of Israel, especially after the 6 Days War in the 1960s, when Israel faced multiple Arab armies and defeated all of them, and American people just exploded with pro-Israel sentiment. Exploded. They were overflowing with love and passion for Israel because they said, look, Israel just keeps continuously... Israel keeps fulfilling Bible prophecy. That was the boomer generation. The boomer generation is old now. They're dying out. Millennials, you do have millennials who are pro-Israel. You do have the Steve Crowders of the millennial generation. But you also have Tucker Carlson. You have Candace Owens. She's a millennial. Very anti-Israel. Finkelstein is very popular amongst young people. And it's coming. It's rising more and more. And so what the article published by The Atlantic concluded, the title of which is The Golden Era of American Jews is Over, what the title concluded was that, well, exactly, what the article concluded was exactly what the title said, that it's coming to an end. And during the Golden Era, I remember those days. You had Saving Private Ryan and Schindler's List and The Pianist, and all these films were very popular, and they were popular because World War II was still fresh in people's memories. The Holocaust was still fresh. And the tragic events of World War II still really resonated with Americans. That's becoming less and less of the case in our own time. They were trying to get this anti-Semitism bill passed. Republicans like Rand Paul were against it, so they had to make amendments to the bill to make it more acceptable. And so it says here that though the committee swiftly adopted Cassidy's amendment, Senator Rand Paul, long a thorn in the side of pro-Israel advocates and Republican Jewish groups, quickly lent his support to Democratic efforts to amend the bill. So here we have a Republican joining forces with Democrats to go against a bill that would penalize so-called anti-Semitism. And then it says here, we're either a free society governed by the Constitution or we're not, Paul said, adding that, quote, we need to challenge hate with reason, not censorship. He further condemned IHRA's contemporary examples of anti-Semitism, arguing the issues touched upon First Amendment protected speech and relevant Supreme Court rulings, etc., etc. GOP Chair Cassidy pulled the bill from the table following the 4 amendments passage, recognizing they made the bill much harder to digest for rank-and-file Republicans. So they made some amendments saying, okay, we just want to make sure that criticism of Israel is not going to be seen as anti-Semitism by the bill, because we do not want to penalize free speech. And so they made some amendments, and then Cassidy comes along, and he said, this Cassidy person says, Bill Cassidy says, well, I don't like these amendments because they make the bill more difficult to understand for the general Republicans. So then it says here, so that it's clear for the people that are watching, supporting these amendments is an effort to kill the bill. So instead of saying, hey, the amendments make some good points and they're there to make sure that people aren't going to be penalized for criticizing Israel and whatnot, Mr. Cassidy says, oh, people like Rand Paul are just trying to kill the bill. You guys are trying to kill this bill, which is very important to combat anti-Semitism. Now, what are people going to say? What are people going to say about Mr. Cassidy? They're going to say, oh, Mr. Cassidy, he's just doing this because the ADL and AIPAC is filling his pockets up with shekels, and that's the only reason why we are here for free speech in the First Amendment. We are not here to restrict free speech to appeal or to appease Israel or Israel's lobby. That's what people are saying. That's what more and more people are gonna say. And it says here, this dishonorable vote served to advance a poison bill, blah. So Mr. Cassidy's pissed off. And it says here that these issues, let me just make sure you guys can see this. It says here that these issues were soon front and center ahead of an anticipated House vote on a separate piece of legislation, the IGO anti-boycott bill, which was introduced with bipartisan support and intended to expand a current U.S. anti-boycott law. So they wanted to pass this bill that would penalize people for boycotting Israel. The bill explicitly targeted U.S. citizens seeking to support boycotts of Israel rather than previous efforts that targeted those who were compelled or coerced. Now, why is the ADL or whoever, the pro-Israel people, so adamant about penalizing anti-Semitism or about penalizing citizens for wanting to boycott or supporting boycotts of Israel? Why are they so adamant about this? Because they're scared. That's the reason why. They are scared. And what they refuse to realize is that the more and more you lobby for laws that penalize criticism of Israel or that penalize speech that is against Israel, the more and more you are going to create anti-Semitism, the more you are going to garner anti-Semitism. You do realize that, right? I'm sure all of you guys know this. If you start saying we got to pass laws and bills and blah, 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 it doesn't matter, even if your cause is righteous. You are going to do the result that you're going to get is going to be the very opposite of what your intention is. Your intention is to combat and to get rid of anti-Semitism. The result of your efforts that you are exerting a lot of, that you are exerting a lot of energy for, the result of your efforts is going to be the very opposite of your pursuits. You're going to bring more anti-Semitism. More and more people are going to start listening to Kanye West. It's just the reality. So look at what Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene said. This is what she said. I will be voting no. It is my job to defend Americans' rights to buy or boycott whomever they choose without the government harshly fining them or imprisoning them. Now, you know what? I agree with her. I completely agree with her. In fact, I know that Republicans will probably disagree with me. Conservatives will most likely disagree with me. But I don't really like this idea of just deporting people because they're critical of Israel or because they took part in an anti-Israel rally. I don't agree with that. I don't. I just don't. Because who knows who could be next? Now, if you're an immigrant and you're supporting terrorism, yeah, fine, you should be deported. But if you're participating in an anti-Israel rally, you should not be penalized for that. And the problem is the pro-Israel lobby is so bent on controlling certain types of speech. They're so bent on censoring certain opinions. I mean, to the point where it used to be very common to find debates on YouTube over whether the Holocaust happened. You don't find them on YouTube. You don't. You don't find them on YouTube. I mean, you find some here and there, but a lot of the stuff that was very widely available on YouTube is not on YouTube anymore. Why? Because they're censored out. And the problem with this is that it doesn't get rid of the problem, right? So the problem is Holocaust denialism. The problem is hatred towards Jews. But if you say, we got to ban all this stuff on YouTube, the problem is that it doesn't get rid of the problem. That's the problem. It does not remove the problem. Now, you could say, well, are you saying that giving it freedom to be expressed would fix the problem? No. That's not what I'm saying. Even if YouTube, let's say this, we're in a situation. I'll put it to you guys this way. The train is already set to where if YouTube censors this type of speech, it's gonna grow. And if YouTube allows this sort of speech to be done freely, it's still gonna grow. That's where we're at right now. My point, though, is that the pro-Israel lobby continuously pushing for censorship is also not helping its cause because the train has already been set. If you push for censorship, then people are going to say, look, there's a conspiracy by the Jews to destroy my free speech. If you say, you know what, we're not going to go against it, then this sort of rhetoric is going to just grow out in the open. And it's going to be there no matter what. So it's a lose-lose situation for the pro-Israel people. That's the sad reality.